Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Matt Pene. I was born in Whanganui because my father was killed in the Second World War when I was just a few months old. So I was brought up by my mother. I went to art school in New Zealand and then I went overseas in '63 and I did a couple of years, graduate years at Hornsey College of Art in London. Just gave me the opportunity to explore other possibilities with in sculpture. And of course, early '60s was a great time for contemporary art when I went to art school. Henry Moore and Barbara Hepworth, they were the two biggest influences at that time. It's not a direct connection to human form, but you can see the possibilities or the association with human form. And so that was the first international work that I saw. It had such a big influence on me. I think I was greatly influenced by minimal art, basically reducing everything down to its basics. So that is the first thing that I noticed when I went to England and around Europe, because I spent a lot of time travelling around Europe, and a lot of that was to look at visual art, 3D, 2D, contemporary painting from that time, but also music from the '60s. And from there, it opened my eyes about the whole international art scene. I had my head full of all these ideas, and then I got the Hodgkin Fellowship, and I was able to just expand all these and develop all these ideas into real forms. So I was just amazed, getting the Hodgkins at that time. And I did a lot of work in Christchurch. I did some great work. I was really pleased with the work I did at that time, in '79. When I started looking at tar fortifications, I was just amazed at the way things were put together. I started looking at some of the First World War, Second World War fortifications, and then I went back to tar fortifications, and I was amazed how complex a lot of the tar fortifications were compared to in the First World War, Second World War fortifications. The main thing was that they didn't just put up a fence, they put up variations on fences so that they might be open at one side and closed on the other side. And of course what the British did was charged in the open side and they got mown down, And of course, the other on the closed side, the Maoris were protected, if you like. I mean, a lot of artists from the '50s, they just did I suppose they were more realistic forms. You looked at something and you knew exactly what it was. Most of my work, you didn't know what it was if just looking at it. You look at it straight off and you think, oh, yeah, what's that? So it made people think more, about the work and the possibilities. And of course, at the same time, it made me think about it. I might have started off with that work, and then over there, I ended up over here with a completely different work. So that might have ended up as another series of works, So I think it's looking at trying to have an open-ended book, if you like, shows you a lot of possibilities and a lot of directions you can go. Well, I suppose these refer to eel traps. Take the basic form and reduce it down into something else. So you're sort of changing it, It's sort of like it's on a journey, and in this journey it changes form and shape. If you think about that, then it opens up all kinds of possibilities. They're all related to the river, yep. And as I say, the high water, it's taken an imaginary water level, if you like, higher, and then if you do that, it changes the form of things, and which is what I wanted to do. Well, I used to do that all the time, But you play around with the idea, and then you start looking at the detail, what materials you're using, and because if you're using a particular kind of material, it has to be in a certain way, because like if it's aluminium strip, for instance, it's not going to look like anything else, is it? Except an aluminium strip. Well, these ones actually relate to, like that relates to above ground storehouse. And so does that one. Storehouses were used by a lot of Māori tribes in different ways. So I just reference these to that form of storehouse. And basically because these works just fit together with pegs, and they can be taken apart in 5 minutes. Yeah, that was done in Dunedin. So when you go into the gardens, that is actually at the entrance. So you come in the entrance and you can walk through the middle of it. You're raising questions, about something, which could be political, but it's just getting people to question things in their own mind, because at the end of the day, things aren't quite as simple as you think. I think that was probably the main element of a lot of work I did, it was the simplicity. Is that simple, or is it more complicated?